I thought that today we would talk about primarily the new cabinet tool, but actually the countertop as well, and some other things that kind of ride along with it. Um, as I was saying to somebody yesterday, my favorite sort of Vectorworks meetings are not when we focus on a single tool, but get to focus on how two, three, four tools work together in a real design situation. And I also want to give a shout out to um, Sherry Woolley Ansapink, whom I work with in our office, who did a lot of the heavy lifting uh, on this. So, um, you know, uh, she put in a lot of work into getting these files, which are all extracted from real projects, to talk about. So, I'm going to go through a series of little kitchen vignettes and a bathroom vignette, and hopefully we'll have fun along the way. I'm starting with this floor plan here, and um, you can see it's obviously a counter with a couple of sinks and so forth. And let's go ahead and have a little perspective view on that. So let's take a look and sort of click on some things and see what they are. I'll go ahead and leave my object info palette open if it will cooperate. There we go. Come on. There. Perfect. Okay, so let's see. There's a comment in the chat. No worries, Al. No worries. So what I've just selected here is a countertop, and this is a new countertop tool that was just rolled out with Vectorworks 2025. And it's very, very different from the old countertop tool, which really we never used. We always used floors for countertops in our office. And so there's some really cool things that you can do with the countertop tool now. And there's a couple of things you can't do yet, but let's go ahead and talk about that. So with the countertop tool, you'll find it if you have a standard workspace, which of course I don't. You'll typically find it in the furniture and fixtures palette. And it's right here, this little countertop tool. Oh, hey, why don't I'm going to turn on my, can never remember if it's visualize or keycaster. It might be keycaster. Get that turned on. Yeah, there we go. So that'll give you a little highlight there when I click on something, and hopefully that'll be helpful. So the countertop tool, there's a couple of ways to draw countertops. You can draw it with a polygon, like a vertex. You can draw a rectangle kind of marquee. You can pick cabinets and then have the countertop tool conform to those cabinets. In this case, I'm pretty sure what we did here is we just drew a rectangle and then did the countertop that way in sort of a rectangle mode. So you can see that this is unstyled like any other, like many other, not any other, but like many other Vectorworks parametric tools. You can create styles, which I highly recommend once you get one that you like. And this one has an elevation of 3 foot 1.5 inches. It's set to the top of the countertop. And that's so that I can fit my standard size appliances like beverage fridges and dishwashers and so forth. I could just as easily make it the top of the countertop elevation 34.5 inches and the 3-inch thickness. So that's pretty straightforward. You can have it in essentially float from the top or the bottom. And if we look at our countertop settings, you'll see that here under the General tab, you can set your elevation. Many of these settings are available right there in the Object Info palette, but it's convenient to see them here. And I can set my reference, the thickness, and then I can have some default overhangs. So side, front, back, And if you've associated the countertop with cabinets, it's going to base what it considers the front and the back and the sides based on the orientation of the cabinets that the countertop is initially generated from. And I'm going to get into this I'm starting deliberately with a somewhat simple little design. So some of these settings we'll get to look at in some later vignettes. So with the edge treatments, you can see that I can specify an overhang by edge. So it's a rectangular countertop, so there are only 4 edges, but I could have as many edges as I want. And I can specify what that overhang will be. Here by default, it's 1 inch. And then I can give it a treatment. So I can give it a profile or its own backsplash or an integrated backsplash. Again, I'll show you some details of that. And here on edge 3, you can see that I've got a waterfall. Let me pivot around to it so you can see what that looks like. So prior to this tool, the way we were making waterfalls is with maybe a floor object or an extrusion or a wall. And in fact, that's what I'm doing on this side over here, because we had this sort of design idea on the countertop that it would float. And currently there isn't a way to do that easily with the new countertop tool. So we just created a wall style. Let's look at that. So there's a wall style that's in the countertop class, its component. I've set it to a 3 cm thickness. I didn't calculate that. I just typed 3 cm and Vectorworks converted that to imperial units. And then for insertion, the top bound is the finished floor and the bottom bound is the finished floor, and it's just 210.5 by default from that, but I can change it. It gives me the class that wall is in, textures and so forth. So like any wall style here, we're using it a little unconventionally for something that's not a wall, but just a vertical panel. And in this little sample file, I haven't set up stories, so there are no finished floor elevations. So I've reset that wall to be bound simply to the layer elevation and then manually assign some heights. So if we peek underneath, you can see, I'm going to turn off under my projection. Let's turn off 2-point perspective here. 2-point perspective is another great new feature, and it's really wonderful when you're sort of walking around at eye level, but it's a little distorting when you're kind of peering under things like this. So you can see I've got this wall and that wall and this wall, and they're only a foot tall to make that shroud. And then I've got other walls here that are making the sort of the principal mass of that little cantilevered block. You know, and in the future, we'll do some lighting under there, or, you know, play with that, sculpt it, and so forth. So that's a nice little technique to sort of integrate walls with countertop, not something that you would expect. So back to the countertop itself. Let's go back to the settings. So you can see that under insertions, right, I can insert symbols, and here I've got 2 symbols of the same sort of sink as a independent double bowl, and I can undermount those. If I undermount them, then it will automatically suck up to the underside, to the thickness of the counter. So in this case, I've modeled that counter to be 3 inches thick. Now, obviously, I'm probably not going to get a quartz or a solid slab or whatever that's 3 inches thick, right? It'll probably be 2 cm or maybe even thinner. So, so just sort of for the sake of early design, I'm just modeling this as a very thick piece, but really it would be composed of panels that were mitered and assembled together and so forth. So here I don't want to undermount this sink because you can see that the sink is now way too deep. So I'll just undo that. But you may be asking yourself, well, how, you know, why is this sink associated with the counter? And that's because one of the cool new things you can do with the new counter tool is you can insert symbols. So we'll go ahead and get a symbol. We'll go ahead and use the same sink. And I'll be in insertion mode here, and you can see it just highlights. And as soon as I place that, it goes ahead and it inserts right away. Bill, this is for 2025. And Steve, yeah, I like the wall tool because it's easier to edit than extrusions. And if you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question verbally. It's probably won't always notice questions in the chat right away, and it's easier for me to sort of respond in real time to your question. By the time I see the chat, we may have already kind of gone past that point that you're trying to make. So you can see that the countertop will accept symbols. It'll also accept symbols that it, probably shouldn't accept. But the key thing to know, like for example, doors and windows, right? The key thing to know is that in order for a symbol to be insertable in the countertop, it has to be set under the symbol options to do that. So let me show you how that works. We'll go to this symbol, we'll right click on it, and we'll locate it in the resource manager, and boom, there it is in the resource manager. And then if I right click on the symbol here, you can see that I've got edit symbol options. So there's a lot of things that are important to edit symbol options, and this is pretty much the only way to get to that, to this dialog box, other than when you create the symbol itself. So you'll notice that I've clicked insert in walls, which I normally wouldn't do for a sink, but that's what I need to do in order for things like sinks, which are most of the things that you would insert in a counter, to be insertable in a counter. So I'll just make it insertable in walls, and the other settings don't really matter all that much in terms of nearest edge on intersection and no break, because we're not really inserting in a wall. I'm sure that in future versions of Vectorworks, they'll update that terminology to be, insert in object or something like that. In any event, so it's important that your symbol have that insertability in order for you to be able to place it in a countertop. So that's an important thing to know. And then I'll show you an example of another symbol and a couple of other settings that you might want to mess with. So there we go. So I've gone ahead and inserted that sink in the countertop, and then I can move it in any number of ways, right? Once it's inserted, I can select these two sinks, and I can use my favored align right and make them align right. Or I can align it with the dishwasher rather improbably, right? And I could align those to the bottom. And then once I do that, I can align them centered. So there it is. I've got a sink, again, very improbably, centered over the dishwasher, and there it is. And then when I realize what a ridiculous mistake I've made, I can just click on it and I can delete it, and that'll get it out of the countertop. Or if I go to the countertop itself and go to the countertop settings, you can see that now I've got these check boxes, right? So there it is. That's the one that I just inserted. And so I can just delete the insertion right here, right? And so there it goes. And then back to the waterfall itself. Let's see. You can see that normally the waterfall is going to be the same thickness as the countertop. In this case, the countertop is 3 inches by default, so the waterfall is also 3 inches. I didn't need to set that, but I can also give it a different thickness. Do something very obvious. So you can see, let me undo and then redo. All right, you can see it just grew to double its size. So if I want to, I can have the waterfall be of a different thickness. And I can either miter it or just have it butt to the bottom of the countertop, whichever I prefer.
Francois, how do they determine which is edge 1, 2, 3, 4?
Great question. It's probably the order in which you drew the vertices. So it might just be trial and error.
Got it.
If it's, you're coming to the countertop, front and back are more obvious. Right. But in this case, no, it's kind of like when you've got a slab object where you might have like 15 different edges. Right. You need to figure that out. I see if you, yeah, it doesn't really highlight it that I can tell on the model for you to be able to see where it is. All right, so on the countertop settings, there's an attribute pane over here. And so you can see that I've got the cabinet edge was off, but I could show it, for example, by class. So I hit OK. And so you could, and those are all visible by default. So when you start using the cabinet tool, or the countertop tool, you might start seeing a lot of extraneous lines that you would probably not want to see in in your top plan view. So be aware that you can go to your settings and go over here to attributes and say turn off the countertop edge. So just no pen style. In this case, the waterfall edge, I just gave it a line style of a dashed line and set a custom weight. So I could make it say lighter and customize the pen weight, hit OK. And that's what you're seeing here with this faint kind of bluish line. So that's some of what the countertop will do. I'm going to loop back to it on some some later iterations. There's a couple of things going on here with other objects. So each of these cabinets is made with the relatively new cabinet tool. This was introduced in 2024. The countertop tool was in 2025. This is the cabinet tool that was introduced in 2024, not to be confused with the custom cabinet tool, which is a legacy tool. So with the custom cabinet tool, you would make, typically a whole run of cabinets, say, 6 feet long, and then you would subdivide it into other cabinets. With the new cabinet tool, you build each cabinet individually, kind of like you would in a cabinet shop, and then assemble them together. And there's a ton of cabinet settings as well, and I've touched on those in some previous meetings. But I highly recommend that once you start building a cabinet that you like, that you make a style out of it. Like you can see, I've got a base cabinet slab style over here, because then it makes it so much easier to just apply that cabinet style to all the cabinets in your project or in a particular room, so that they're all consistent and you don't have to manually change them over and over again. So cabinet styles, I think, are pretty essential. You can see that there's a general setting where you'll set the width and the height and the depth, right? You can, under frames and reveals, you can set all the parameters that for the carcass itself, dimensionally for base cabs. and upper cabinets. And then for the cabinet box itself, you can add stretchers. Now, some of these settings are grayed out because, again, this is a style. If I converted that to to unstyled, you'd be able to edit all of these features. And a couple of things to watch out for is you have a much wider range of hardware options, as we'll see. So I've got a custom knob handle here for my doors, and I can choose that from a library that comes with Vectorworks. There's a cabinet pulls file, which is very similar to the cabinet pulls that are available with the old cabinet tool. There's some IKEA pulls as well. And of course, you can make your own. And then there's some additional ones, which these are probably from Service Select. So a lot more options for your hardware. And you can have distinct hardware for your doors and your drawers. So your drawers could match the door, or they might have their own. And you can also specify how far offset from the edge of the door or drawer they are, or you can not set them manually and simply specify those dimensions. So that's pretty good to know. For finish options, you can specify a different finish for all of the surfaces, left, right, inside, doors and drawers. And then for the doors, again, here, this is just a slab style. So all of this is grayed out because of the style, but you can see all of the different settings that you've got. And then for drawers, you can do a primary and a secondary drawer. So for example, if you want to do shaker style for most of your drawers, but for narrow drawers, you want to just do a slab style as is commonly done, you could do that within the same cabinet. So have a mix of different drawer styles. So here, we've got a little sliver of a cabinet for future insertion of a power outlet. And so you can see we just made a cabinet that's just 2 inches wide and put it right next to the pullout. Right? So that's a pretty common little trick that we do, because getting power in islands to meet electrical codes can be a little challenging. I'm going to move on to another one, unless there's anybody wants to chime in with any questions so far. All righty. Okay, so here's another island. Got some symbols here, some light fixtures, and so on. Here's an example of what I was saying earlier with the cabinet style. Here's a base cabinet shaker style. Let's look at that. So you can see that I've got a primary drawer with a shaker frame, but I've got a secondary drawer that's just a slab style. So when I insert in my general, this is where I insert drawers and doors into the cabinet, right? I can insert, say, add another object. I'll go ahead and make that a drawer. And you can see that when I make it a drawer, it allows me to choose whether it's primary or secondary, and it's going to assign the hardware accordingly. When I have this little grid here, that's meant to be a calculator. So what that means is Vectorworks will take the overall height of the cabinet. It'll subtract the kick if there is one. It'll subtract any fixed dimensions. So this drawer is fixed at 6 inches. That's what the little pencil means. And it'll just divide whatever's left over evenly between the remaining drawers, right? So I could just delete this one and delete that one. And you can see now it's giving me 2 equal drawers or 3 equal drawers. If I want to make the next drawer fixed as well, I can just click on that object and I could make that, say, 9 inches. Right? And then whatever was left over is going to get divvied up evenly amongst the components with the little calculator symbol. And when I add something, right, I've got a whole list of items that I can add. A false drawer, which wouldn't get hardware, a left swing door, double door, right swing door, and so on and so forth. So lots of different options there. In this case, this was a pretty simple little island in terms of the counter itself. So we didn't even make that as a counter. That's just a floor. And here the sink isn't inserted in the floor because it's a floor, not a countertop. So that's just a symbol that I can just drag out, and you can see we just clipped out a hole of that floor in order to make that farm sink work. Here again, we've got these little false cabinets at the very end. So that's giving me this shaker panel. Basically, it's a cabinet that's 4 feet wide. So this is the face of the cabinet that we're looking at. It's 4 feet wide. It's whatever height it is, 3 feet minus 3 cm, it looks like. And then it has a depth of 5 inches. So that gives me a little bit of millwork in which to insert this Vectorworks receptacle hybrid object. And then you can also see with the cabinet tool, with the newer cabinet tool, that when it comes to the cabinet box, I can apply the kick inset to front, back, sides, anything that I want. So if I had a single cabinet as a small island, I could put a kick all the way around, which is nice. And then under general, I think it's under general, might be under, I guess it's under the cabinet box. Yeah, anyway. So that's a nice little trick where you can, customize that. And of course, not all your cabinets have to be the same height. So, this one's a little short just so that it can accommodate that farm sink. This cabinet over here, if I just hide the appliance, right, you can see it's just got an opening in it. So if we look at the cabinet settings under general, here's an appliance opening. We've just specified the height to allow for that appliance. And then the rest just a drawer. This one's pretty straightforward. Little bit more traditional. So for this little spindly leg here, kind of reused some tools in a little unorthodox way. Oh, this one we just made as a sweep. So we just got a profile and we swept it. And to make it square, you can see that for the sweep, typically when I do sweeps, I'll do a segment of something like, 6 degrees so that it looks nice and smooth and cylindrical. But you're free to make a sweep much coarser than that. So by making 90-degree segments, I just get a little square post. I think in an early version of this cabinet, when we were just kind of sketching it out, I actually used a column tool to make these little legs and just gave it a base, a shaft, and a capital and just set the dimensions. And that worked okay. And I have no idea what these things are. Oh, that's just a floor for that trim board. So, as usual, it's perfectly legit to use kind of a mix of different kinds of tools. And then again, because each of the cabinets here is just an individual cabinet, you can just stick some storage back there as just a separate cabinet, just like you would build it in real life. And here again, while I usually love it for these little worm's eye view, 2-point perspective is not my buddy. So you can see, here's a cabinet, there's a switch leg, another cabinet, and then buried in here is a wall right? So we went ahead and modeled that as well so that we could get everything sort of sorted out. Any questions about that? It's eerily quiet. Okay, let's look at another example here, maybe show some different things. Here I've got a kitchen with a, an island and an appliance wall. And here again, we're using the cabinet tool to create these little end caps for concealing electrical and just giving a nice finish to that cabinet. Oh, I take that back. That's just a wall because it's just a simple surface, so no need to articulate it with a panel. So here again, we just have a styled wall that we just stuck in there. You can see there's a variety of different hardware options. Pretty sure this is just a floor, not the new countertop tool, because it's just simple, just a 3-inch slab with a hole clipped out of it. And then for making this shelf up above, that's just another floor. And for the tile, that's actually just a rectangle that's classed appropriately, and it's just sitting there in 3D space. So didn't even bother making a Renderworks texture. That just has a tile pattern assigned to it, which looks a little grainy. So it's not appropriate for like a high quality Renderworks rendering, but it works just fine for sort of a little sketch view. And then for the refrigerator, again, we just have wall styles to make that those side panels for the refrigerator to hide it. And then actually this little bath is a little more complicated, even though you would think it'd be simpler. Um, so here's again, this is the new countertop object. You can see we've got a lot of things going on here. There's this super thick backsplash that the deck mounted, or excuse me, wall mounted fixtures are mounted to, provides a little shelf. And so that's not a profile that ships. So if you look at your edge treatments, right, let's look at the edge treatments. Sorry, under general. You can see that for any countertop, you can specify one edge or trim profile and one backsplash profile. So you can't have 6 different kinds of backsplashes. So in this case, we just took one of the standard backsplash profiles that ship with Vectorworks. There's a chamfered one, a rounded one, and a rectangular one. So we just took the rectangular one. That's just essentially a polygon, a 2D polygon that Vectorworks then kind of extrudes along path automatically as part of the countertop. So then we just took it, we renamed it, and we edited it. So that's how we got that, and that's over here. So just so you can see what that looks like if I edit 2D on that. It's just a polyline that's 9 5/8 by 6 inches. And that's all there is to it. When you're drawing this thing, you'll see that there is a locus. And so you want your corner of your profile to hit that locus so that your backsplash sits on top of the countertop instead of, say this, the other side, where it will stick into the wall, or, somewhere out here or somewhere up here where it will be sort of, improbably floating in space. So that locus is kind of the insertion point for that path. Okay. And then if we look at the floor plan, whoops, sorry, floor plan. If I show you one of these color sinks, you can see that it actually, we'll go to a 3D view. You can see that that sink is undermounted and it extends beyond the extents of the opening, obviously, right? Like any undermounted sink. And so here, if you right click on that, you can see that there's an edit hole component. And so we just took the profile of the hole that we wanted to make in the countertop as a 2D, in this case, it's a rounded rectangle. And that is in the hole component of the symbol. So that when we are, inserted in the countertop and we make it undermount, right? See how those are undermounted. It'll undermount to the actual thickness of the countertop. Now this countertop it's a 2 cm quartz, right? And you can see that in spite of being 2 cm, it's extra thick. And so the way we did that is we kind of tweaked the tools a little bit. Let's go to the countertop settings and look at the edge treatments. Sorry, the edge trim profile. You can see that normally the edge profiles that ship are like a full bullnose or a flat edge or a chamfered, or an Augie, just the kind of typical profiles that you would expect for a countertop. And of course, these reshape themselves to accommodate the thickness of the countertop that you stipulate. But we didn't want to do that. So what we wanted to do is have this very tall skirt. So once again, we just took the initial one of these profiles, assigned it to it, and then within this file, we went ahead and edited it. Cancel that. So there it is. And let's go ahead and edit that. So you can see that's just a polyline. It's 6 inches tall. I made it 2 centimeters thick. And I just omitted this edge so that it would have a bit of a bevel to it. So that if let's go ahead and hit the clip cube. Look underneath, you can see that it's hollowed out. I think I saw somebody put something in the chat. Oh, okay. Yeah.
So do the fixtures automatically insert into the backsplash?
They do not.
So you just have to position them yourself.
Correct.
Okay.
I think. But yeah, I'm pretty sure. Let's go ahead and try though. Let's reveal this. We'll locate this object in the symbol in the resource manager. Oh, no, that's not what I wanted. Let's edit its components or its options. Yeah, let's make it insertable. Where'd we go?
Yeah, see how
right? So it'll let me insert it in the countertop. And I can even move by point. And I could even align it. Well, I mean, I guess, but you can see that I don't really have I don't
Yeah.
really have a height, such, right? And so it's, in this case, it's just,
Francois, I think when I was investigating this, that if it's deck mounted, like if it was not wall mounted, that you would be able to insert it.
oh,
and-
yeah,
And do
Yeah.
all that, so.
good point. Yeah, because if you don't give it a hole, right, then then you're safe. Just, or you could make the hole if you really wanted to be, super fussy with your modeling, you could make the holes, you know, for the actual fixture drilled in the counter like you normally would. But in the backsplash deck, no, I don't think you can do that.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna mirror this bad boy. There we go.
Francois, it looks like the backsplash also stops short of the end of the countertop. Is that because of the overhang?
It's stopping short of the edge of the countertop because I've turned what's intended to be just a little piece of trim and made it sort of, you know, edge. So if this trim profile that I've exaggerated to be 6 inches tall was actually just a bullnose, right? You would want it to stop before the bullnose turn. So um, that's going to be an enhancement request that I'm going to file with Vectorworks that give us the option to make the backsplash run all the way to the trim, but it's stopping short of the trim because this is trim, because currently if it's all or nothing with a waterfall on the countertop tool, the waterfall goes to the floor or it doesn't. I can't make a waterfall that stops, as far as I know, that stops, like if this were just a floating cabinet, well, it is a floating cabinet. If I wanted a waterfall to wrap and stop at this cabinet, there's no way to control the height of the waterfall. So my solution was to use the trim feature of the countertop tool to make that. That makes sense.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. And then, these are just individual cabinets. Under the hardware, I just, again, this is a style, so it's not editable, but I could edit the style and show you. I just made it a full channel. That's one of the options. So you don't need to have a specific hardware selected for like a 24-inch and a 30-inch or whatever. You can just call it out as full channel. I made it 1 inch deep and 1 inch tall. And then under visualization, or sorry, classes and attributes, I put the hardware in a class that will show up as dark gray. And so if you zoom in, you can see these little angles are just little extrusions that are just built as part of the hardware. So and this is a double drawer, right? But I could just make it say double doors. And then because it's a door, Vectorworks knows to put the hardware vertically, not horizontally. And then that floating shelf below is just, simple. It's just a floor that's assigned to the appropriate class. And it turns out we're probably going to use round mirrors here in this project. So this is just a couple of it's probably a sweep or an extrude along path for the frame and then an extrusion for the glass. But then I went crazy and I made a cabinet style. So one thing to mention that I haven't mentioned about the cabinet tool is that it's a separate, slightly different setting, whether it's a base cabinet or a wall cabinet. Just because the way hardware and some other sort of fine-tuned settings work. Initially, there was just one cabinet tool when they were rolling this out in the preliminary design of the tool. But it became obvious that the settings are different enough for a wall versus a base cabinet that they kind of, you have the option of making them base or wall cabinets, and you specify it. It's still one tool, but you get slightly different options if you choose to make it a wall cabinet or a base cabinet. Anyway, so for this mirror, I just created a cabinet style that happens to, look like a square mirror or any rectangular thing. And that's just I did that just because we're constantly, making different sizes of rectangular mirrors in all of our projects, and who wants to have a whole library of like 20-inch mirrors and 24-inch mirrors and so on and so forth. So so there you go. You can use the cabinet tool to make a styled mirror if you so desire. Sherry, is there anything I've forgotten?
It looks like you were doing something with the cabinet under the sink, like turning the hardware or something. I don't know if that was something you wanted to talk about. Or if that's
Oh,
just
yeah,
something to have.
these are double drawers, and I just changed them to double doors, and that's what makes the hardware vertical. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, I knew that, but I didn't know if that you did that on purpose because you wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, no, I did that on purpose. Yeah, to show that Vectorworks knows the difference between a drawer and a door.
I'm
Uh,
curious how you're going to support that shelf below the cabinet, that low shelf.
Well, Guy, the answer to that is we're in schematic design, so I don't have to worry about that yet.
Good answer.
I
They've
would
got
say,
they've got those steel rods now for floating shelves. It used to be you had to customize all that. And I would probably, Sherry, you're going to say something smart. Go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say the exact same thing that it's just like you do a floating shelf in the kitchen with those. That's probably what we would do.
Yeah, the one thing I would probably do is maybe make it not quite so deep to discourage people from standing on it to change the light fixture. Because obviously it's meant for towels or whatnot.
Put a note on it that says "See structural."
Yeah, or sometimes I did a cabinet that had a bunch of little like steel legs, and
Yeah.
I just I made those steel legs using the table and chair tool. I just had no chairs, and I put the tabletop in a non-plot in an invisible class, and then I could have 4 legs that were all the same, and so might have some little steel legs here somewhere.
Yeah.
So Francois, that begs the question on the sink on the left side. Um, you have like 2 double drawers underneath that one.
Yeah.
Were you assuming they were fixed? Obviously, because you wouldn't have drawers at a sink, but
Well, I did it as a drew it as a double drawer, but so I could get the hardware to be on top, but it would actually be double doors. I'm just kind of
I
cheating
see.
a little bit so that the
Okay.
hardware would all line up on the top.
All right, so I'm not crazy. Okay, thank you,
Yes,
Sherry.
you're welcome.
Well, and we also do drawers sometimes under sinks, and then we'll use a B trap instead of a P trap for the sink, and then the drawer might have a notch cut out of it. I mean, even IKEA does that. So it's not entirely impossible to do drawers under sinks. I've certainly seen it done in kitchens. The thing I just want to reiterate, because if it's a straightforward sort of, kind of run of the mill kitchen or bath or whatever, no problem. But once you start trying to do, something a little fancier, that's maybe a little bit less conventional, you really want to pay attention to the details about how you construct this, right? So again, you want to make sure that your sink or whatever, under symbol options, is insertable in a wall. You want to make sure that you have a hole component so that the hole is not, right, so that the hole is not necessarily the outer bounds of the symbol. And then the other thing too is when you insert a symbol, not so much an issue with the countertop, but for example, for light fixtures and so forth, one of your symbol options is to make that symbol story aware. And so if you set up stories and you have like a ceiling level in your story, you could make all of your light fixtures be story aware so that they automatically assign themselves to the correct ceiling height, or at least to a default ceiling height that you can then override on a case-by-case basis. And that's really nice, because it's never fun to do a walkthrough with a client and then you see that there's a bunch of can lights sort of laying on the floor because you forgot to set them to the right Z. So that's just something else worth mentioning.
Could you go over one more time how you made the mirror a cabinet style?
Yeah. Let's go to the cabinet settings. So I made the size adjustable. Oh, let me edit the style. I could specify that it can be any width and height, right? And
Right.
set the depth to force to be 1 inch. That's probably what I would do, but I don't know, someday I may want to do an 1.5 inch mirror, whatever. So that's one thing that I did. And then for the cabinet box, for the face and frame reveals, I just made everything a 1/4 inch or a -1/2 inch for the reveals. I don't necessarily know that I needed to do that, but I just did it just out of an abundance of caution.
Okay.
And then the doors are a 1/4 inch thick and they're slab style. So that's, the door is, quote, the glass.
Right.
And the
That's what I was
drawer,
wondering. Yeah.
the drawer, I didn't even bother because I just made that a door, and I don't let you assign a drawer to it.
Okay.
And then what I did is I just, put in a drawer false front. So maybe I should go and edit these. No, it's a slab. That's it.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a 1/4 inch thick, right? And then under class attributes, I just assigned to the doors and drawers this glass mirror. You can't really tell because it's not, it's a shaded, it's just a quick shaded rendering. So it's not
Right.
super reflective, but I just assigned a mirror class, texture.
Okay.
The doors and drawers automatically get placed in a glazing class. And then the cabinet box and the frame are in my material steel clear class. You don't get, it's a wall cabinet, so you don't get a toe kick. So I don't have to worry about, making that. I have a default height to the bottom of the cabinet of 3.5 feet. But then that's user definable, so I can tweak the height. And then once I had it set up that way, then I just, saved it as a style.
That's just such a great idea because I'm having to do a lot of mirrors.
Yeah. And, and then if you decide, oh, I don't want my mirrors black anymore, I want them bronze, you just change the color
Yeah.
in the class or in the style and you're done. Yeah, I don't know why. I wish I thought of this 6 months ago, because I'm constantly going in like, I got to make another mirror symbol. Yeah. Other questions? Well, thanks for attending. Sorry about the little interruption there midway. And have fun playing with the countertop and the cabinet tools, and you know, these are, there's a lot of settings to them, so inevitably you're going to bump up against something that doesn't quite work the way you'd like. So you know, share your frustrations at a future meeting.
Mhm.
Vectorworks also has a web page for enhancement requests, so you know, there's places for you to make requests to improve the tools. A couple of chats just came in. All right. Well, thanks everybody, and I will see you next time.